everybody, and from the Paulding County Planning Commission's point of view, Happy New Year. This is our first meeting for the year. We've got a little business that we've got to take care of right out of the gate, but as a matter of habit, I'll remind everyone that if you have an audible device, cell phone, or if you go so far back as to have a beeper, please turn it off or silent so that it doesn't interrupt the proceedings of the meeting. I'll go over the rest of the particular things, whoever will shortly, but we have election of officers that we've got to go through, so I'd ask your patience and please bear with us. So as a matter of business to the Planning Commission, we are needing a nomination for the election of a chairman for the Planning Commission Board.
I nominate Jody Palmer. Second.
We have a nomination by Mr. Henson of Jody Palmer for the chairman's position, and I have a second by Mr. Leggett. Is there any comment? All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. And thank you very much for your confidence. I really appreciate it. Then we move on to the vice chairman's position. Do we have a nomination for the vice chair?
I nominate Roger Leggett for vice chairman.
I have a nomination for Roger Leggett from Mr. Aston. I have a second from Mr. Steele. And at this time, any comments on that? At this time, I'll entertain a motion. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. We have minutes from the previous session of this body from November 29, 2022. I'll tell you what, before we go any further, we've got the officers elected, and I do want to welcome our newest member, Mr. Jacob Wicks. He represents the Paulding County Chairman's position, but also as the school board's representative on the Planning Commission. So very good step in the right direction and having the voice of the school board here with us. So very thankful for your service and thank you for your obligation to us. Regarding the minutes from the previous session, is there anybody has any requested edits, comments, or concerns about those? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Steele. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Fitzgerald. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Paulding County Planning Commission is a recommending body for the Paulding County Board of Commissioners and at times for the city of Hiram. Anybody that is any applicant wishing to present in front of the Planning Commission has 15 minutes that will be allotted to their time to come up and make presentation. That is your time. You can use all of it. You can conserve some for rebuttal if you so choose. You also must share that time with anybody else that wants to speak on behalf of the application. Conversely, if anybody here on a particular item, application that's before the Planning Commission wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns, 15 minutes total accumulative time will be dedicated to them as well. Again, if you end up in a line of people wanting to speak, we ask that the first person please be mindful of the people behind you, that they have an opportunity to voice their concerns. Any decision made by the Paulding County Planning Commission will be forwarded to the body of the jurisdiction where the application resides. In most instances, that will be to the Paulding County Board of Commissioners. Typically, that is to be heard at the next regular session of the Board of Commissioners. In one of the instances today, I believe, we have an LUP that is to be considered on behalf of the city of Hiram. That will be forwarded to the city of Hiram. And we also have the mayor of Hiram, Frank Moran, here in attendance, as well as our zoning administrator, Cliff McGrady. Mr. McGrady would be the one that you would contact to schedule when you would be heard before the city council. So in moving forward now, generally I'd ask Ms. Lippman, Director Lippman, to please introduce the application.
Okay, thank you. Our first item today is case 2023-01-Z, application by Amy Evans requesting to rezone 63.17 acres from R2 suburban residential to A1 agricultural for agricultural purposes. Property is located in land lots 986, through 988, 973, and 974 in District 19, Section 3. The property address is 823 Wilson Road in Temple, Georgia. The applicant is present. Staff received one call with questions, and the staff recommendation is approval with no stipulations.
Thank you very much. The applicant would please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair, that being me. I'd ask everybody to forgive me. I've been kind of battling some laryngitis, so if you can't hear me, I will speak closer to the mic. Also, Planning Commission members, if you do wish to speak during the hearing of an application, please make sure you turn your mic on so that those that are streaming at home would be able to hear you. Please, it's your time.
Hello, Mr. Palmer, Board. I'm here, as she stated, to have our land rezoned from residential to agricultural. Purposes being just hobby farming. That's pretty much it. I agree with the staff opinions that it won't disrupt any surrounding land, streets, or any future development.
Well, thank you very much. Again, any questions that may come to you or to anybody who may be in opposition from the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners does not count against your time. You said hobby farming. Can you be a little bit more?
So hobby farming would just be minor sale of like plants that I grow and resell to friends or family, or chickens, or nothing major.
Okay. Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
I got a couple. To follow up Mr. Palmer's question, do you currently have a business selling stuff, or are you gonna make it a business? In your letter of intent, you stated the same thing, to grow and to resell plants and timber. So, as an individual, as a business, or?
So I do have a business. I have an LLC that I opened approximately 2 years ago for the same purpose, but never went anywhere further with it. And so that business license was reinstated, and if I do sell any, it will be through the business license.
Second question may be for staff also. The 63.17 acres was shown as 4 tracts on a survey at one time. Is it 1 parcel now?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not rezoning 4. Okay.
What percentage of the work that you're gonna do is gonna be involved in chickens, where it's eggs, selling chickens, poultry, plants, et cetera? What percentages?
I have a full-time job. This is strictly a hobby, maybe 10%, if any. I mean, it's just an interest that I have, not necessarily something that I'm gonna take on full force.
Any other?
So I have a lot of hostas that I grow, and I don't know if you know anything about plants, but hostas get very big. So each season I cut them, and then sometimes I resell them, sometimes I give them away. Daylilies, same thing. Any small plant that has to be resectioned to be able to grow, continue to grow. No trees, just plants.
What type of animals? You mentioned chickens. We're not talking pigs or anything like that, are we?
No, I have enough of those. I have 3 boys.
Okay.
Thank
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions to the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone here that would wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application? Hearing none, then at this time I will entertain a motion by the Planning Commission for application 2023-01-Z.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Steele. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Henson. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 to 1 and 1. Excuse me. Again, this is not the final action on this application. It will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Is that tonight then no? When is it?
This will be forwarded to the March 14th,
The March 14th meeting, will that be a 6 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock meeting. Oh, that's the early in the month, okay. So at 2 p.m. on March 14th, For them to consider it, you must be present. Ms. Lippman?
Our next case today is case 2023-01-LUP, and this is located in the city of Hiram. It is application by Janet S. McMillan, care of Edwin M. Ceccarelli, attorney at law, requesting to renew the current land use permit for property to remain a private dwelling for applicant and operator of the permitted business use. Property is located in land lot 681, District 2, Section 3. The address is 590 Hiram Douglasville Highway in Hiram, Georgia, and it is located in Post 3. The applicant's representative is present. We did not receive any calls on this case, and the recommendation from staff is approval with one stipulation.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ed Ceccarelli. I reside in Marietta in Cobb County. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of Janet McMillan, who is the owner of the property at 590 Hiram Douglasville Highway in the city of Hiram. The property consists of approximately 1 acre, and the structure on it consists of a modified residential dwelling of approximately 1,500 square feet. Since her acquisition of the property in 2015, this owner has made substantial improvements to the property, including upgrades to road access points, driveway, handicap access, railings, entrance upgrades, exterior lighting. Many of these improvements were mandated by the county as conditions for the commercial zoning classification that had been sought and obtained by the former owner of the property prior to the current owner buying it. But the current owner, Janet McMillan, wanted to reside on the property. County regulations specify that in order for an owner to reside on property within a commercial zoning classification, that owner must obtain a land use permit to that effect, which is the reason we are here. The owner has applied for a land use permit allowing her to reside on the property. And technically, we are seeking a renewal of the land use permit allowing her to reside on the property. 2 years ago, the owner applied for and obtained such a permit allowing such residence. County regulations specify that a land use permit is good for only 2 years, after which the owner must reapply for another permit for another 2 years. And that brings us here today. The immediately surrounding area is composed mostly of single-family residences, I believe in the R2 classification. This property has been a residence for many years, or had been a residence for many years before Miss McMillan, the current owner, acquired it in 2015 from that prior owner who had obtained the low-rise office classification. From the residential perspective, the property has the overall appearance of a residence, but for the properly licensed business sign out in the front. From a business perspective, the property has plenty of parking. There are no non-related employees living there. There are very limited deliveries, not the type of activity that generates noise. It's a very low-intensity business. Business hours are limited from 10 to 8, and it's closed on Sunday. The owner understands that the land use permit allowing her and her family to reside on the property is not transferable to a subsequent owner, which is, I believe, what the stipulation was, and that's the way it has been. And the permit is good for a 2-year period when she will have to renew her application, just as it has been for a couple of renewal cycles. To my knowledge, nothing has transpired, nor has the owner done anything while residing on the property for the past 2 years to disqualify her from obtaining a renewal. I'm aware of no complaints relating to her residence on the property. I do wish to add that inasmuch as the owner has made significant upgrades that were mandated by the county and/or city, and she has been residing there for a period of several years, to deny her the continued use of this property as a residence would be a real hardship. Allowing the owner of commercially zoned property to reside on that property is the only thing before you, it's the only thing that's being requested. And we respectfully request your recommendation for approval of this application for a land use permit, and we respectfully request that that recommendation be further referred to the city of Hiram where the property is located. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
Sir, how many rooms are in this building?
There are 3 bedrooms, and I was there several years ago. I mean, I don't know exactly how many rooms, but I know that there are 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, a huge living room, and I think there's like a carport. That's just the best of my recollection.
Thank you.
Any other questions to the applicant?
Yes, what business is conducted from the residence? I've never seen a vehicle there except for,
It's, as you're going toward Hiram City Hall, it's just before it on the right-hand side. She conducts psychic readings.
oh, okay. I know the house because I went to school with Tony Craig that lived there, you know, during that period of time. But like I said, I'd never seen any cars there, so
And that sort of lends to what I said. There's not a lot of traffic because people are making an appointment one at a time.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners? Thank you for your time, Mr. Ceccarelli.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion with regard to application 2023-01-LUP for the city of Hiram.
Move we approve with the one stipulation.
Motion to approve with the one listed stipulation. Is there a second? Second. Second from Mr. Aston. Okay, we got 2 voices down here. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Again, this will be forwarded to the city of Hiram for a hearing at their first available regular session. Please contact the city of Hiram to see what the date could be. Okay. Director Lippman?
Thank you. Our next case today is case 2023-2-Z, application by Rock Toller, requesting to rezone property from R2 suburban residential to A1 agricultural for the intended purposes of a small hobby farm. Property is located in land lot 589, District 3, Section 3. Property address is 500 Skull Road in Post 4. The applicant is present. We did not receive any calls with questions or comments about this item, and staff recommends approval with no stipulations.
Yes, sir.
So, my name is Rock Toller. Legally, my name is Robert Stephen Toller. But I go by Rock and always have. I am a resident of 500 School Road, so we live at this subject property. The subject property is 5 acres. We're proposing a hobby farm. The property is surrounded on 3 sides by family property. If you look here at the board, it's surrounded by, on three sides by grandma, essentially. This 5-acre tract was split from the grandparents' property several years back, and we built our home here, or established our home. On this property, it's kind of a compound, so both sets of grandparents live on this property. Mom and dad live on this property, and sister and brother both live on this property, speaking from my wife's sense. So essentially, our goal here is to establish a hobby farm. We are somewhat established already with chickens, cows, and a couple of goats, but we want to take full advantage of the property. We want to grow our own food. We want to harvest our own food. We got family history of cancer on both sides now. My father actually passed of cancer, and so we start to rethink where the food comes from and how we can live a healthier lifestyle. And growing our own food is that. I don't want to use the term homesteader, which is, all over the internet and so forth, because homesteader, I think, is self-sufficient. We're not going to be self-sufficient by any means. We would like to be, but we won't be. This is a lot of work, farming. My wife and daughters are learning from their grandparents about how to can vegetables, and essentially we're showing them how to reap what they sow. But our immediate need is because as an R2 zoning, we can only have 5 chickens. Backyard chicken ordinance limits us to 5 chickens, no roosters. So that's our immediate need. Obviously, my wife has visions by looking at HGTV and everything else of having a greenhouse, having a she shed, if you will. That's her vision, and I'm going to do my best to keep her happy. But there is no known opposition that I know of. So I would ask the board to accept the staff's recommendation of approving this rezoning from R2 to agriculture.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the applicant from the planning commission?
How many chickens are you looking at? I know you granted 5, but
We're granted 5. Essentially, just enough, 2 dozen probably, immediately. I would like to have more, but obviously we live here. And so if we wouldn't want chickens on the porch, per se. If you've had chickens on your porch, they leave a trail. They've been there. So I would say I would want 100, but no, that's not realistic. Plus you have to feed the chickens. And so that's an expense as well. But enough to feed my family. If eventually we had excess, we would sell them off at $8 a dozen. I would like to supply everybody here with eggs. I think it would be a lucrative business.
are they gonna be fenced?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they're fenced.
Any other questions from the planning commission to the applicant?
What kind of chicken?
I really don't know. Rhode Island Red's the only kind of chicken I really know, but I don't know. Just a plethora of chickens. Whatever you get, Rhode Island Reds from Tractor Supply, so that's readily available, easy to get to.
You got any roosters?
I currently do not have a rooster because I'm currently in compliance. However, when you have 2 dozen chickens, there is a pecking order, and so there's a need to have a rooster to keep the hens in order, essentially.
I know you said all those,
It's nature at work.
you had all those statements, and I know you meant them quite literally, but it sounded so metaphorical to me. I don't.
Other animals you're gonna have on this 5 acres?
I got cows now. I got a pony. I got a donkey. I've got a couple of goats. That's the immediate need. I know Mr. Leggett asked about a pig. My wife has read mixed reviews about swine as far as health benefits. I don't know, if they came out with some study that said, hey, look, if you feed a pig all corn or whole wheat or something, it's the best thing you've ever had. I don't want to rule that out, but I would remind the board, I do want to be a good neighbor. I'm living next to grandma. I don't want to make grandma mad. Don't want to make any of my neighbors mad. Plus, I'm living here. So if you had some of that, you know, if you had a stench or you had an odor or something, you know, I would be the first to send the pig to slaughter.
Well, one of the comments that the staff made is paragraph 3, just be familiar with the zoning category. It states that hog and pig farming is not a permitted use. Now, I'll defer to Director Lippman if she wants to comment any further on that, but
No, I was just gonna point that out as well, that,
just
A1 does
keep
not
those
allow
things
hog
in
and pig
mind,
farming.
you know, because read the details.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions to the applicant? Board of Commissioners, any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Toller.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Hearing none, is there anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? At this time, I'll entertain a motion with regard to application 2023-02-Z.
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Leggett. I have a second from Ms. Fitzgerald. All in favor? The motion passes 6-0 and 1. Again, this will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting on the 14th at 2 p.m., I'm assuming,
Yes.
for it to be considered by them. Mr. Toller, you will need to be present for it to be considered. Ms. Lippman.
Thank you. Item number 6 is case 2023-01-SUP, application by Dallas Meath Properties LLC, requesting a special use permit on 17.13 acres of I-2 Heavy Industrial District tract to operate a crushing and screening activities facility, earth material recycling. Property is located in land lot 1277, District 3, Section 3, north of Brooks Road and Old County Farm Road in Post 4. The applicant is present. We did receive one call with questions, and staff recommends approval of the request with 5 stipulations.
The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon. My name's Joel Larkin, and I'm with the firm Sams, Larkin and Huff in Marietta, and I'm a resident of Paulding County. And I enjoy being here today to watch the board consider all these family businesses. I'm pleased today to represent a different type of family business. My client is a company called Cummins Enterprises, Inc. It's owned by Mr. and Mrs. Cummins, who are sitting in the back row there. They're contractors who specialize in erosion control, clearing, grading, demolition, stormwater, sewer, crushing, and recycling. And their offices have for quite a while been located in Cartersville, Georgia. They've been successful because they love their business and they work hard at it and try to do the right thing. So they've outgrown that facility. And last year they started looking for a new location, and they ended up buying the old B&B septic tank site that's located near the old county jail on Industrial North Highway. Y'all are probably familiar with the site. Everyone knows the silo. This property consists in total of about 28.5 acres. It's got split zoning. It's LI on the front and HI on the back. It's been developed over the years with about 40,000 square foot of industrial buildings, and it's been sitting vacant since the Great Recession. And in a state of disrepair, it's been a blight, and it's been, I think, an embarrassment to the county. But the Cummins saw the site, and like these folks who fell in love with their locations for their hobby farms, they deemed it perfectly suitable to relocate their business and their 85 employees. Every dream has a problem. This site, if any of y'all took the opportunity to go on it, was the site of B&B Septic. And over the years, they built tons and tons and tons of concrete culverts and septic tanks and grease traps and other concrete products that are literally strewn about the whole property right now. None of which are usable contractually and as a matter of fact. So the Commons are faced with the daunting task of doing something with all those tons and tons of concrete products. And there's really two choices. You could haul them off to a landfill, or they could process them on site. Taking them to the landfill doesn't make economic sense for a lot of reasons. And it would subject the county roads to all kinds of truck traffic that's unnecessary. They happen to be in the business of demolition and recycling of product, where they go to different redevelopment sites, and they actually have the equipment to process the concrete products on site, to pulverize it and turn it into usable product. They do that on site on large projects, and they're used to doing it in all kinds of nooks and crannies. You might have seen their equipment in downtown Atlanta between two condominium buildings. So they're used to doing it in places where people are. So they understand the issues that relate to this type of work. But in this particular case, they would like to process the equipment on site over a period of years, turn it into different types of recycled products that they can use for development of their site and for development of other sites that they work on. When they're done with that, and during the process, they would like to, when they work on other jobs within, say, a 10 to 12 mile radius where transportation makes sense, bring back concrete product to their site where they can process it there and turn it into usable product. Under your zoning ordinance, a special use permit is required if they're going to process that for reuse or resale off the site. And in this particular case, they would like to be able to reuse and sell to some of their clients and use it off the sites. So they have filed a special use permit application for the portion of the property that's outlined on the map you have on the board there. That's only part of their property. The property to the left of it there along Old County Farm Road and going down to Industrial North is the balance of their property. I think it's about 20 acres that's HI, and the rest is 17 or 18 acres. After filing this application, we've met with staff and discussed it. We've discussed transportation issues. We've discussed potential problems, potential adverse impacts on adjoining property owners. The county DOTs had a chance to evaluate it. They went out and took core samples of the roads and evaluated the impact, if any, that this proposed recycling use would have on the infrastructure. And largely because of the limited amount of truck traffic. We're not talking about a project where we're going to bring in tons and tons and tons of aggregate from miles and miles away. We're talking about a fairly limited operation to serve our business as much as anything. But we anticipate potentially, a total of 50 trips in and out total for this part of their business per week. The county looked at that and, took into account that there's already a developed HI industrial access up Old County Farm Road that was developed when B&B Septic rezoned this, and it meets applicable ordinance requirements. So the county has included two stipulations from the DOT standpoint. One relates to a potential financial contribution for upgrade of the road when it's paved in the future, and the other related to donation of right-of-way along the frontage to meet the minimum required right-of-way requirement. And the applicant is agreeable to those stipulations. There is a caveat that the county's offered and that we appreciate, which is if we determine as we develop the site that we can access only from Industrial North Parkway, then those two criteria would not apply. We have full curb cuts on Industrial North Parkway, and as all of you know, that's an industrial park. This whole property falls within the industrial park. You've got all kinds of different industrial uses of varying intensities along there. Butch Thompson Grading is right across the street. You've got the old jail. I think the DOT has their supply yard there where they've got mounds of materials and keep their trucks. The other stipulations that the county has requested are also agreeable to the applicant. Let me get them in front of me here. They've requested that we confine the crushing and recycling activities to between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that was actually what we had requested. This is a family business. We're not going to be out there on weekends crushing. My clients have lives and they have families. But to further understand their business, this is not going to be a full-time operation where they'll be crushing all day, every weekday between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. The equipment that they use for this operation will sometimes be on-site crushing. Other times it will be off-site on jobs that they're working on. So the crushing operations will occur when the equipment is not otherwise being utilized off-site and when their staff is available. So this will be an opportunity for them to recycle this product and other product and to better utilize their staff and their equipment. There is a very, very substantial inventory of this type of product on the site. I mean, it literally, if you see that little roadway going down through there, it is piled high on both sides of the roadway, back in the woods with trees growing up through it. So we anticipate it'll take about 3 years to, with the type of operation we're going to run, to process that material. And then after that, we're going to continue to process material that we bring in from within a fairly close radius. There were concerns expressed initially about noise and dust. And to help understand the process, we actually fired up the equipment and operated it for a week so that we could actually experience what it was going to be like on site. We monitored noise levels at various points around the site, and the decibel readings were well within the normal type of noise levels that you'd have in this type of an area. Dust, I think, is as big a concern as anything, and my clients have, among other things, they own this beautiful former water truck that they got from a fire station that they keep on site, and they've got a dust management plan that talks about, I don't know, Ann, can you? Oh, they're doing it from, if they could get that up on the monitor, that would, I don't know if I have it upside down or how it needs to.
They'll zoom in on it.
Whee. I'll read it to you. The site, as part of our water management, will have dedicated water, at least one dedicated water truck with water sprays and a water cannon at all times when the equipment's operational. There's dedicated water sprayers for all active stockpiles of material so that you don't have a stockpile of material that dries out and then you get a windy day and it's blowing dust all over. The crushing equipment will have water hooked up to it at various strategic places so that it's spraying water on the material as it's being processed. Water will be hooked up to the screening mechanism that it goes through. The material drop distance out of the equipment will be limited, so it's no more than 3 feet. Obviously, the further you drop it, the more opportunity there is for dust. Water will be sprayed on the conveyor feed during material transfer. Open body trucks will be covered when they're transferring material. There'll be wheel wash stations for when vehicles come and go to eliminate tracked material off-site. We've got a 100-foot buffer that that we're required to have in industrial property. That will help to the extent we do have dust escape. But we've also got, from the property, the areas that are developed kind of sit down in a bowl, where we've got a low area where most of this is happening. And then it goes up where we're in a bowl, and this is heavily wooded property. And we've agreed to maintain the 100-foot buffer and also keep the actual equipment at least another 100 feet from the residential property lines. We'll use liquid polymers when required to keep dust down, and travel surfaces will be maintained and watered to keep dust. We also met with, there's one residential property owner that lives most proximal to the property. It's Mr. and Mrs. Vickery, and I believe they're the people that called in with a question initially. Mr. and Mrs. Cummins and I met with them for 2 hours on the site on Sunday, and we walked around and we walked in the woods and we looked at the elevations. And I believe they've made a phone call to the county afterwards that they have stated that they withdraw any reservations that they have, and they support our proposal. We've committed to them, they've got Mr. and Mrs. Cummins' personal mobile numbers, and we've committed to them that if they're experiencing dust or any problems like that, to let us know immediately, and we'll either shut down if weather conditions require that, if it's too windy or whatever, or we'll explore with them what other measures we could take to make sure that we don't create a dust problem for them. So this is a project that's mutually beneficial to the county and to the property owner. We've got a blighted site that they're restoring and making productive again for the county. We've got all these materials that need to be dealt with, and the county promotes and recommends recycling, and this is an opportunity to do that. It'll limit truck traffic on the road, and there'll be no adverse impact to the county from this, with the stipulations that are in place to control noise and dust. And we're available for any questions that you have. I have our engineer, John Payne, back there, and like I said, Mr. and Mrs. Cummins, and we're happy to respond to any questions that you have.
You've already acknowledged the 5 listed stipulations recommended by staff. Try to go and visit all of the sites that we have coming up before us before any of the public hearings that we do. I will say, and I understand the property's already zoned I-2. I-2 comes with it noxious fumes, odors, noise, and those are the types of businesses that generally are located in I-2 type zoning districts. The proximity of the houses, the one on Winding Creek Path, which you've already mentioned, if you've come to an agreement with them, that's good. Is the intent of the operation to isolate it to one portion of the property so that you don't infringe on the borders of the other areas to the north or to the south or to the west?
This is something we discussed at length with the Vickerys. The intent is to process all the material on the site. So the Vickerys understand that we are going to, in the beginning, move around the site to a certain extent to process it where it is, and then we're going to establish a permanent location in the most suitable location that, based on the experience there. And the idea is probably going to end up moving close, further to the south and closer to industrial north. But it would be probably more of an impact on surrounding property owners to truck all this around on site to process it than to process it and move the processing equipment.
Any questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant?
Yeah, I have a few.
Sure.
So on the parcel that you're asking for the SUP on, does your client, is that the only piece they're gonna use, or are they gonna use B&B's old offices and
They're moving their corporate headquarters
to?
and all their equipment and their business into the buildings.
Okay.
They're not immediately in a state where they can be
Okay.
used, but they are moving.
I like Mr. Palmer. I go to all the sites. I went there yesterday and then drove around and looked, but I've known the B&B property for a long time, and I understand all of the precast that's sitting there. There's a lot for them to get rid of. On the stipulations where number 5 would allow you to have null and void 3 and 4, have they made that decision which way they're going? Whether they're gonna go with the $28,000 toward construction or bring out the entrance up to North Industrial?
I don't know that we have. I think that'll be continued discussions with staff.
And do they currently run this type of operation somewhere else?
You don't run it on site currently, right? You run it,
Different locations.
right now it's
Okay.
mobile. They'll go to a development site. Right now they're landfilling
Okay.
stuff that they aren't able to treat on site.
And the stuff that they do haul in addition to the precast that's sitting there to be demoed, will be stuff only from job sites of theirs? So someone like myself couldn't send something to them? Is that correct?
That's the reason they're creating it, yes.
I have a few questions. You have to bear with me on my voice. So you're crushing and screening the existing concrete structures and pipe and so forth. It's already out there. What else is going to be crushed or screened? Are you going to be crushing and screening any asphalt or topsoil, or what is the plan, specific business plan? What are you going to be doing out there?
I'm not necessarily fully versed on that, but the use that requires SUP is the concrete work. They do plan on making this their home office, so they'll be utilizing the buildings and they'll be parking their trucks on the property and using it in a general manner consistent with the current zoning, the way a contractor would. And I'm not trying to hide the ball. Would you like to expound on that at all, Mr. Cummins? I want to make sure you get the truth, not.
Yes, I'm Kevin Cummins. We will haul in concrete and crush it and then process it and bring it out to our jobs. And maybe in the long term, may, in the future, maybe do some topsoil screening. You know, we want to develop more of the site, but right now, we're in the early stages of moving in.
So you're crushing and screening concrete. Are you going to be selling that to other people?
No, mainly we'll use it ourselves. If we have excess and we need to get rid of it, we will.
Okay.
But
So-
it won't be a lot.
So I noticed on your website, and by the way, you got a very nice website, compliments on that.
Thank you.
But I noticed you do, in your course of business, you do demolition and crushing in your course of business.
Yes.
So are you going to be bringing in broken up concrete from demo operations to this site to crush it up also?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's close by, we will.
So you're not going to just crush up what's out there. You're going to be using it as an ongoing operation to crush and screen concrete. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So on Cummins Enterprises, are you actually going to move to the site?
Yes.
What's
Our business is going to move there.
What's the time frame on that?
We're hoping maybe sometime in June.
So on your dust control plan, is that something that y'all just did in-house?
We do it on jobs as we crush downtown Atlanta and we have dust control and then we have it.
Who created your dust control plan?
We created it. So we did.
Yeah, because so what looks to me like is if you were just crushing and screening the existing concrete on site, that'd be like going to a job site or project and just screening it there with a portable crusher and then leaving when you're done. It sounds to me like what I understand is that it's going to be an ongoing crushing, screening operation. That's correct, right?
Right. Yes.
So then that brings in a lot of other questions to be answered and things to think about. One thing is the hours of operation. Why is it 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
Well, we're willing to adjust it if we need to.
Because you got residential properties less than a mile away, and so they're not going to want to hear the noise of this crusher. What decibels? How loud is your crusher? I mean, what decibels does it emit?
It's averaging around 30.
40?
30.
30?
Yeah.
Well, that's low. But anyway, they're not gonna want, the people still in bed in the morning and getting ready to go to work and school, and then in the evening, they're not gonna wanna hear crusher running nowhere, and they're not gonna want to possibly have any dust blowing over their way, so that's something that's gonna have to be looked at. I looked at some other counties in our metro Atlanta area, and they required, on an ongoing crushing operation, to have a dust control plan created by a registered engineer. And so that seems to me like that would be prudent to consider that. I'm sure you got a lot of experience and all, and it looks like you folks know what you're doing, but they call it a fugitive dust control plan. I guess you call it that because they want to capture it before it gets away. But that's something there that will need to be considered. And also, do y'all have a permit with the Georgia EPD and the federal EPA
A permit to,
to do crushing and screening?
no.
Yeah, so that's another thing. If you're gonna have an ongoing operation, from what I researched, and by the way, I've been in the business, I'm retired now, but I've been in the civil business for 40 plus years. That's why I'm asking all these questions. But from what I researched, it looks like you may have to have a Georgia EPD permit and a federal EPA permit if you're gonna have an ongoing operation. And like I say, when it changes from just doing a temporary thing like a job site and going to an ongoing operation, it makes, it changes everything. So you've got, from my understanding is, back to the hours of operation, you've got a lot of school traffic to Moses Elementary School on Old County Farm Road. And I just don't think 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is gonna work. I think that's gonna have to be changed to something like 9 o'clock to 4 p.m. or something like that. So that's my initial set of questions.
One of the questions I have is there a minimum windage that is set by the EPD or EPA as far as, or a maximum windage that you can actually do operations in during the day? Say 10 mile an hour, if you're over 10 mile an hour, are you required to not grind during that time?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't grind if the wind is, up to over 10 miles, we would not grind.
And you, based on your operation, you would elect not to grind if it was over 10 miles an
Yes,
hour.
yeah, if the water
But is
can't
there
keep it down.
Is there a regulatory compliance that you have to meet for that? I mean, the question, we appreciate the fact that you'd be studious enough and respectful enough not to grind
Okay.
if the wind's over 10, but is there anything that holds you to that beyond just your commitment to do it?
No, I don't know.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Obviously, we'll meet all regulatory requirements.
Can I go back to a question I had for the owner?
Sure.
That I asked Mr. Larkin earlier, is the off-site material that you're gonna bring only from jobs you're working on? Or is it gonna be open to other people bringing it to you?
Just right now, it'll come from our jobs.
Just now, but that leaves open that,
If someone has a load of curb that they want to bring in and dump it, yes.
okay.
Any other questions from the planning commission?
Yeah, that was gonna be a question that I had was, in your proposal here, you talk about that you are an existing business and you're bringing in the temporary crushing. It's gonna take approximately 3 years, but then you're going to be doing the crushing for your own business. But I also heard you say that you were wanting to expand your business and you're wanting to grow because you've already outgrown your current location. You're bringing all of your business here. What is the kind of the plan? Are you going to, for the crushing portion, as your business grows, or are you planning on, as you build that permanent crushing site, to expand that crushing portion of the business as you're company grows?
No, it's mainly our grading part of the company that has grown, so it has. Our crushing, what we do is, we do several jobs, and what we do is bring our mobilized crusher to the job, process material, and when it's sitting idle, we can bring it to our location, crush up concrete, re-bring that material to our jobs. So it's, we move it around. It's our grading, grading and site grading is where we mainly, that's what we do most of it. That's where we are 100%.
So in the future plan, you're not really preparing yourself to create a crushing aspect where you're going to eventually incorporate the sale or resale of the crushing material to the public or to other
Yeah.
general contractors and things of that nature as you progress.
There's not enough of material in the area to do that.
And it doesn't make economic sense to bring material in from outside of the close area. The transportation costs override it.
Did you have another question?
I have another question. When you're finished crushing everything that's on the site there, what are you gonna do with that material?
We're going to take it to the job sites and use it.
You're gonna sell it on job sites?
Yeah. We'll take it, most of it, a lot of it, we'll take it to our own job sites and reuse it on the job sites.
And you won't be recycling either asphalt or contaminated dirt or anything like that?
No.
Is there any concern on your part that you would have an accumulation of the material to such a degree that you're not getting rid of it as quickly as you're bringing it in?
Well, we won't bring it in then. So we won't.
And that's why it's going to be processed more on an as-needed basis in that interim. It's a lot difficult to control a big pile than it is the product and the way it sits.
Well, we make it like 57 stone 34s, so we make 50 loads of each and have it in a stockpile, and when it gets down low, then process more.
And that stockpile of 34s, 57s,
Yeah.
you're gonna use yourself.
Going to use it.
So I'm not, would you sell me some?
Yeah, I'd say if you need a load, we'll sell a load.
That was where I was going. I mean, to
Yeah.
find out if it was a public sale
Yeah,
or
but
was
we're
it
not
public.
going
As the
to,
letter of intent says, the primary purpose is for them, but the reason they need the SUP is to be able to sell to other
Right.
people as well.
yes. Like if I have 100 loads of 57s and I need it, I'm not going to sell it. So I'm not.
Board of Commissioners, any questions?
I have a question. I wanted to know if, I wasn't as diligent as you guys to drive out to the site and drive around out there. So this buffer, we have all problems sometimes with buffers, and that they get plowed down, big trees, and then they plant a tree this tall to make a buffer. And so what is the nature of your buffer? So, my concern is noise and dust both, and so it seems like maybe some evergreen type things might be appropriate out there, but whatever, I just want to hear what you had planned.
The way that it exists right now, and this is why we spent so much time with the Dookies, you're going straight up 100 feet from here to here along this residential line, and it was cleared some time ago, but it's all grown back up. So this is already fully vegetated. It looks like when B&B zoned this, somebody augmented the buffer along here, because you've got Leland's, and they're fairly mature along here. But one of the reasons we walked it was to see if it made any sense to do plantings in there. And you're in the woods. It's probably, we had it flagged, we had the 100-foot and the 200-foot flag, and you're going straight up. You're not gonna accidentally grade that out. You're down in a bowl down here. But we'll keep it flat.
Gonna be hauling in broken up slabs, things like that, is that right?
Yes.
Obviously on site, you're probably gonna be using some handheld equipment, some braking hammers, saw cutting equipment, things like that.
We have, mainly what we use is munchers rather than hammers.
Were the sound readings, was this other equipment, was it active when you took the sound
Yes.
readings?
Yeah.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
I think I heard Mr. Larkin say that they weren't actually gonna be working from 7 A to 7 P on a daily basis. Some days they would be out on their work sites, or what did you say,
The way
Mr.
the
Larkin?
hours of operation came is, you know, in meeting with staff,
Could I ask you to step back to the mic so that
I'm sorry.
we hear?
Obviously, there are ordinances in effect, but the original response that we gave, if I recall, what hours of operation is, we're going to be limited to daylight hours. We started with that. So in the summer, you know how long daylight is, and sometimes if you're in a big job, we left some latitude. But this is not an operation where we're going to have big equipment set up that's going to run all day, every day. As I indicated, this equipment will be on-site and it will be off-site. When they need to process, the equipment will be set up to process. If they've got a lull where they don't need it, then they'll be more likely to process. It could run for 2 months in a row, theoretically, and then it could be gone for 4 months. So there is no set schedule. It's, you know, the material all has to be processed, and they'd like the ability, when that's gone, to process more material, mainly to provide material for themselves. But it is not a business that's being set up, you know, where the sole purpose of it is to process material all day, every day.
Thank you.
But doesn't the SUP, it would allow it to be that way, correct?
Allowed to
So-
be what way? It would.
And I
would.
think that's the concern.
Yeah,
That-
and it's our position, just so you know, that this is the most appropriate site around for this. This is an HI site, there's very few, there's a nice hole there with the uses around it. You know, there's very few people who could really be impacted. In the Vickeries, if you look at a map, they're automatically the people with the most concern. And they immediately realized that when they saw the signs. And that's why, you know, we spent so much time with them and let them see all aspects. That's why we went ahead. We could have kept all the equipment quiet and tried to sneak this through, but in meeting with staff, we said, we're going to start it up. And we did that before the notices went out, so you know, just to see what kind of reaction we would get. And the reaction was nothing
Right, but once
to the equipment running.
but once Piedmont's property to the north of you is full, you'll have a lot more neighbors.
Yeah,
Have a
but
lot
they're,
more
but they're
potential
not
complaints.
as proximal as you think, the way that property is and with the topo
Right.
and the vegetation. This equipment does not create huge noise off the site. And that may be hard to believe, but we've got monitoring set up out there, and we monitored it while it was running. Because that's everybody's that was my immediate reaction, damn, that's gonna be loud. But we ran it, and, because he told me about the kind of, what do you call it, a muncher. There's different, you know, some machine pulverizes, this grinds it, if you will, you know. So the noise, they're very comfortable with, to be able, and the Vickeries were very concerned about it. That's why they got to listen to it. You know, the dust is a little more of an issue that's variable, but they've been doing this. I know you asked for an engineered plan, and I respect that, but they've been doing it around people for 20 years, and modifying the plan. And I don't know, do you have an objection to your engineers looking at the plan?
No.
And providing input? But they've been going to sites that are developing around people who are already there. And this is the water plan that they've come up with in practice, not because they had to, because anybody told them, but because they had to in order to be able to work around people and get the job done and not create problems for themselves.
Well, I know from a perspective of an administrator, and the county has a bunch of technical expertise on their staff, and that's wonderful, but the idea behind an engineered plan over, you know, how to take care of dust control and any of the other aspects gives the county actually a basis of understanding of where they need to be, where without that, you know, they're having to reinvent the wheel to figure it out.
John, is that something your company can do? Okay, W.K. Dixon can look at this plan and review it and provide input.
Mr. Steele alluded to it as well, that, you know, when you're issuing an SUP on a particular piece of property that would travel with the rights of the property, as long as Mr. Cummins is there, you know, we can have faith that he would do the right thing and operate the business in an understanding way of the neighbors that are surrounding him. But you've opened the door for future sale of the property to someone who might not be so considerate. So I think any precautions or safeguards that we can have would be very appreciated. Are there any other questions from the Board of Commissioners? Planning Commission?
One of the things I see is on the north side of the property, you've got, on both corners of the boundary, you've got creek that's running. Is there, are you willing, we've got a 75-foot stream bank buffer. Would you be willing to increase that to protect that, since you're gonna have a dust situation that could affect the creek?
And actually, that reminds me now, when we were out there looking, I was trying to decide or think why they planted those lelands. I think they may have been planted to demarcate the buffer line to keep them out of it. But you jump in if you don't like my answer. But my initial reaction would be our plan is to start working the site from the north and working south. And that ultimately, we're going to be out of the north as far, we don't plan on setting up the permanent operation up there near that buffer. So I think we could probably come up with some language. But we do need to be able to process that side of the property. Regardless of what happens here, we've got to process all that material and get that taken care of and then move away. But we haven't asked for permission to go in the 75-foot stream bank buffer, and we're not asking for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
That's 75 on both sides.
But they'll only be operating from that one side, so that's the only concern I have with the dirt going into it.
What is the non-disturbance buffer, Ms. Lippman, between I-2 and, say, R2, or low-density quality residential as well?
100 foot.
Is that
We're
100?
showing that, but I don't know where the stream is in that, but yeah, we're also showing the 100-foot undisturbed
Okay.
buffer there.
I thought that was already in play, and that's.
But I don't know where the stream is in that.
That's a
It might-
non-disturbance buffer, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna add is
And
that.
if you're gonna speak, you need to come to the mic, sign in, and tell me your name.
We're gonna get the whole room up here.
Done it before.
But we're not gonna have pigs on the property. Or roosters.
My name's John Payne. I'm with WK Dixon. I'm an engineer. I was going to add that with you asked about the 75-foot buffer. The stream is on that property line, and we also have a 100-foot undisturbed zoning buffer. So, like, we have an additional 25 feet from that 75 feet you asked about. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I hadn't caught, but it is 100 instead of 75, so.
And if I recall, the lelands there are probably 12 foot tall along that line. Was that, they're pretty tall.
Yeah, they're tall.
They've been there.
Yeah.
My guess is they got planted about the time it was zoned in 2004 or whenever.
John, have y'all done full civil plans?
No.
Okay.
Would there be an additional, aside from getting the SUP, as far as development of the property, that would be subject to plan review as well for any further development on the property? Okay.
Yes.
That would be where all of the technical expertise of the county comes in and does Q&A with them and gets that, okay. Thank you
Here
very
you
much.
go. This picture shows those lelands. That's that northern boundary line.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those little wash crosses work at Dobbins many times. Now, on the crook, now, if you're bringing in big slabs from outside, you will be, recycling the steel out of them also? Or are you gonna have like a track hoe with an impact, hammer to break them up where you can put them in a grinder?
What we do is we'll break them up before we transport them. So they will be made to like 2 foot. We bring them, and then the steel will be cut out of them. And when it crushes it, then we'll take the remainder out of it. And it will be recycled.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Aston?
So the existing structures on site, are you gonna have a hammer on a excavator breaking up those structures before you put it in the crusher? Or what's your methodology on that?
Yeah, we'll have a muncher. A muncher does munching on them. Yeah.
So you actually got two machines running out there that's gonna cause a lot of noise. And so, back to Cummins Enterprises, now, if you're moving Cummins Enterprises to the site, how many additional employees will that bring? How many more people will that bring to that site?
We'll have about 6 to 8 people in the office and about 5 to 6 mechanics.
Is there an office already out there, or are you gonna have to build one?
No, there's an office there.
Okay.
There's 40,000 square feet of buildings on the site now.
Well, I will say, I got a few concerns. That silica dust off of those crushers, on an ongoing operation, that's a respiratory hazard. And I think you need to get a plan by a registered engineer drawn up and submit that to the county. I think the hours of operation need to be changed. And I'm concerned, may I have a question to the staff? Do you have the traffic count on Old County Farm Road?
Yes, sir. The count I have on record is 750 right now.
Is what?
It's less than 1,000, 750 cars per day.
750.
Is that all? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like for you to check and see if you need a permit from the Georgia EPD and from the federal EPA. And if that's required, you would need to submit that to us as well. That's all I got.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. You may take your seats. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on behalf of this application? There are about 2 minutes remaining in that side's time. Anyone that wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application? Please come to the lectern, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Oh, yeah, my name is Dee Dyer, and I live adjacent to this property on the opposite side of the road. And my concern is about the dust too. I understand we've been talking about that. My problem is when B&B, I used to own this property, all the runoff goes straight to my property, which is my property, my mama's and Mr. Brooks's. So the problem is I don't know how many gallons of water a day they could spray without it, rushing back down into my creek. And I done had one pond filled up down there from when B&B had it, and that's the Leland cypress. They're also planted on account of me. My driveway is like right adjacent to the Leland cypress. I guess that was my biggest concern was, the runoff and how much water they could spray a day. And like days that they're not spraying, when it's real dry or whatever, the wind gets up and blows the dust anyhow. So there's just several concerns on that. And where the Leland cypresses are, there's a little branch that comes out, a little underground spring that feeds into that creek too. And that's part of the reason that my pond got filled up with silt from B&B septic tank years ago. So I guess just water runoff and dust, is my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition or may have questions or comments? Please come forward, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to me.
My name is James Brooks. This is sort of family-owned property across the road. And my concern is on this right here. Me and my family owns pretty close to 50 acres there. So what I want to ask all of you to do is to put it in your head, that's your 50 acres. What kind of effect is this going to have on the value of my property? And also the other thing is, you asked them, was this stuff going to be contaminated when they bring it in? How's he going to know that it's not? They going to test it? I know concrete, car and oil gets on it and they bring it in, it's contaminated. And they talk about so much water for the dust and all that. It's gonna get in, the spring. It's gotta go to the creek. Everything's downhill. I don't see no way of stopping it. But that's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooks. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application? Hearing none, I'm going to ask the applicant or the applicant's agent to come back. We do try to the best of our ability, try to address questions that are raised by those that may have voiced opinions against an application. The dust has already been, I think, discussed quite a bit. The runoff, I will say, would more than likely be addressed or should be addressed during plan review to make sure that there's no adverse effect on streams as well as ponds. But we've had the question about the runoff, about pollutants with what may be being hauled in and being processed. The value of the property, I understand, is very subjective depending on what your point of view is. But can you address those two items or ask your client to?
I will. As far as runoff, I've been on the site and there are runoff issues on the south part of the property, probably, and from the adjacent property that we're going to have to address as part of development of the property. But as far as the specific concern about runoff related to the dust treatment plan and the water we're spraying on the property, we're going to have an engineer look at that treatment plan anyway. We can have the engineer provide appropriate safeguards for that as well.
Then I would guess I would direct that over to staff as well, to anybody who feels that they would be willing to answer for it. Are there conditions that must be met for an operation like this, based on county development standards, state rule, or whatever, that addresses water quality, both in runoff from the property or containing water that is being added to the property?
I think any development is gonna have to meet those requirements in order to move forward. So I think there's nothing specific to this. Each use is looked at by what it's doing and how it's developing the property and how they would have to maintain that quality.
And I will remind the panel that this client is a contractor who's engaged in that type of work as far as developing site. So this is a client who's fully aware of what you have to do with stormwater and sedimentation, all the appropriate safeguards and development issues.
I would like to add one thing. I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to add about, he was bringing up about the concrete being with oil and spills on it. We have engineers on the job before any material is hauled off. It's all approved to be hauled off. So if it is, it'll go to a certain landfill and be disposed. So we don't bring, mixed material and try and make a product out of it. It's already been tested by engineers on site before we transport it.
Well, I thought it was definitely a good question to be asked.
Yes.
And then maybe to underscore that, they would be bringing this to their corporate office site. They're not taking it to remote land. They're making Paulding County their home base, and this property is going to be their home base.
I respect that. I think we still need to answer the questions as it relates to runoff, and I think that would be done during the plan review process. I know that illicit discharge is anything other than rainwater that is leaving the property. Therefore, if you have sedimentation that's being pulled out into the road, that's an illicit discharge. That is something the marshal's office can pursue. I know that if you're getting sedimentation going into a creek or a pond, those are additional environmental rule violations that the Paulding County has at their disposal to pursue to make sure that both is corrected and not going to happen again. I know plan review addresses quite a bit, but I just wanted to hear it from the staff that they have the tools they needed if this were to be approved subsequently by the Board of Commissioners, that you'd be able to manage, guarding against those adverse issues. You have a question? Any other questions from Planning Commission? Then thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to Yes, please.
Mr. Brooks, if you could approach the lectern, please, how's your property zoned?
We ain't never did nothing like that. It's been passed down through the years. I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but it's not industrial. Do you know the? Agriculture. Okay.
farm
Yeah, it's under the farm covenant.
Is it the property directly across Old County Farm?
Yeah, I own from, all the way down from Brooks Road all the way down to the creek, the same length that he's got there. Then on Brooks Road, I own all the way down to the first subdivision.
Okay.
That whole corner right there.
The whole
We got
corner.
Brooks Road, then Old County Farm Road, so.
That parcel, the red square in the center, right?
Yes, the red square. And
Based on the map, Jimbo, it
the
looks like
reason I
it's
know
R2.
about the creek, the little pond, the spring water, that's right there across the road, because that little tract of land there, the sort of slope shape, is actually 6 acres. I actually used to own that. I sold it to B&B many years ago.
Thank you very
Anything?
much. No, sir.
The existing zoning of B and B, how has that affected your property values? Can you elaborate on that?
The zoning,
Yes, sir.
How-
How,
as far
B and B
as
in the
far as
business?
as far as I know, it hasn't affected my property value. But if I get a crusher and I get something over there that's making a racket all day long and dust and stuff's flying up in the air all day long, then who's gonna be interested? It's gonna hurt the value of my property.
Okay.
I mean, somebody wanted to buy it, to develop it, they're not gonna do that with all that crap and all that noise across the road.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So at this time, I will begin to consider a motion for application 2023-01-SUP. I would call to mind, there was some question regarding time of operation, that's listed in the stipulation currently at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. There's also discussion about a dust control plan, requirement by a registered engineer. I think we've addressed the buffer question, or do you still want that to be a part of any consideration?
We've addressed it, but one of my main concerns is, since this property's so high and the creek is obviously below the property as far as elevation, I'm concerned with we're talking about, that truck carries probably 1,000 gallons. It can pump 1,500 to 2,000 gallons a minute at its highest capacity. That's a lot of water that's gonna be running down, and that's one of the concerns I have. How is that runoff gonna be maintained where it doesn't get into that creek? Can you answer that?
I can't answer that, Mr. Leggett. Two things. First of all, the water is an integral part of the process, and they're not just going to be blasting it out. They're going to be, it's spray nozzling it out at an appropriate rate to control the dust. And it's essentially going to be absorbed by the material. But we will have our engineer include in their plan appropriate measures to make sure there's a water quality pond or whatever, if the engineer determines in their analysis that there's a risk of water leaving the site. But I think if anything, the problem is going to be not enough water, not too much. That's the fear that people have when you first talking about it, is dry situation, not overly wet. But we'll install, the staff will insist that we install appropriate measures to contain the water on the site.
I will say they've made a lot more advances in recent years, and a lot more restrictions are in place to make sure that water quality is maintained at the same level it was prior to development. We go through that every day where I work. It's a lot better than it used to be, and they would make sure that the water, it relies too on anybody willing to make a complaint and make problems known. So that's also on the neighbors and anyone else involved in the process to bring that to somebody's attention. but then corrective actions can be taken, regardless of this location or any other for that matter.
And Mr. Palmer, if I may, we've made a phone number available to the Vickeries. If they're experiencing any difficult issues, we'll make numbers available to all the adjoining property owners. So if there ever is a situation, they'll have someone to call to get an immediate response.
Okay. At this time then, with those items in mind, if anyone wants to make a motion for the application.
I make a motion we table this to the next meeting to allow the applicant to work with staff, community development, to see if they want to amend and agree to the some different stipulations, things that were brought to point today, comments of concern, and just to see if it can be all worked out, or it's good for them and it's good for the surrounding citizens in the community.
Second that motion.
So I have a motion to table from Mr. Aston. I have a second from Mr. Steele. Is there any comments from the rest of the planning commission?
Ask Mr. Phillips, do we need a certain date on that table?
I think it was made to the next meeting.
I believe you did say to the next meeting, and we have a date that March 28th.
So we have a motion to table this consideration of this application to the next meeting of this body, which March 28th, I'm assuming is correct. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes 6-0 and 1. So we will meet back here in a month. Hopefully conversations can be had amongst the applicant and staff of the county to determine what they need to do to move forward. Next item on the agenda, I will ask Ms. Lipman if you would please introduce that.
Okay. Our final item today is zoning ordinance text amendment, a public hearing on that. Paulding County, Georgia will consider zoning text amendments to Title I, Administration, and Title II, zoning of the Unified Development Ordinance for Paulding County, Georgia. And I will provide a review or a summary of those changes. The main reason for today's text amendment was to include distilled spirits retailers and distilleries. There's been recently some amendments to Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinances related to those. So we wanted to bring the zoning ordinance in compliance with that. So we have added some definitions related to distilled spirits retailers and distilleries. And we have added distilled spirits to beer, wine. A special exception used in B1 and B2 will now read beer, wine, and distilled spirits retailers. That's in the B1 and B2 zoning district. The term distilleries has been included with breweries in B1 and B2 and has also been added to I1. The next change that we made, since we had advertised for some changes, we recently went to a meeting of the North Georgia Metropolitan Water Planning District, and they have a new plan, and one of the items that we needed to update was related to car washes. I think we have been enforcing this, but any conveyor car wash that is started after January 1st, 2011, must install operational recycled water systems. A minimum of 50% of water utilized will be recycled. I think we've been enforcing that, but there's 4 definitions that we need to add to the definition list, and we need to include that with the special exception for car washes. We also have some corrections that we did with this ordinance. I realized at the time we were adopting the Unified Development Ordinance, we had made some modifications to the low-density quality residential zoning district. However, sort of at the end of the process, that district was inactivated, and the version of LDQRD that was put in the inactive section of the appendix was the modified version, not the version that was in the 2003 zoning ordinance. So we have made that correction, and we found 2 typos and we have made correction to those. At one instance, we did not change R2 with sewer back to R3, and in the minimum parking spaces required for amenity areas, we said spaced instead of spaces. So whenever we find a correction, we try to take care of it. I'll be happy to answer any questions. There is a copy of ordinance 2023-04, which if you are in favor of making these recommendations, I would ask that you recommend approval of ordinance 23-04.
Thank you very much. So this is a public hearing. So at this time, I will go ahead and open the floor to anybody who wishes to make comment on the proposed text amendments, and the public hearing is open. I will pause for dramatic effect. At this time, I will close the public hearing portion of the meeting. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission with regard to these recommended changes to Director Lippman? Board of Commissioners?
I have a question that probably there's a great answer for. I just have no idea what it is. How do you enforce or prove that someone is using 50% recycled water?
They would have to have a recycler shown when they got their building plans and their civil plans done.
But once they got them done,
Yeah.
is this like enforceable at all, or is it just a government mandate that we just have to do it?
It's a
I'm not
government
going to
mandate,
open a car
but
wash,
it's-
don't worry, I'm just curious.
This is, that requirement is one that the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District has asked all of the member jurisdictions to adopt. But before the March meeting, we will reach out to them and we will see if we can get an answer for that.
Curiously enough, when the drought of '08 was in full swing, we had conversations with all of the car washes, of which we've seen a proliferation of them in the past couple of years, particularly in Hiram. But we've had conversations with them about their water usage because we were concerned that they were contributing to the depletion of the lake reservoirs that we were drawing from. And actually, most of them were already in place with utilizing methods that gave them 90% recycled capacity, where they were only adding 10% of their water usage was from raw water source or being pulled in. So I don't think that what the state changes at the district is looking to recommend is really going to have that much of an impact, particularly with newer car washes. Where you would see it more would be if they wanted to apply those standards to your wand spray car washes where you get out and brush your own car. I think that's where you would see the majority of the changes if they wanted to try to carry that over to those places. So.
Yeah, this requirement only applies to those that utilize a conveyor
There you go.
system.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Lippman. So at this time, we will take a motion on regarding the zoning ordinance text amendment. The request was to make a motion to recommend, I guess, approval of the ordinance 2023-04. So I guess that would need to be in your motion.
I make a motion to recommend approval.
Of ordinance 2023-04. Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Steele. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Thank you, everybody, for your patience in getting through the agenda today. I would ask at this time, I have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Steele, second by Ms. Fitzgerald. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0 and 1. Everybody have a wonderful month of March.